Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Aquarium Online Academy. My name is Sophie. I'm a member of the education department here at the Aquarium, and I am not alone in my studio. Oh, my microphone. I am also joined by my friends Connolly and Lourdes, who are controlling all the fun stuff you see going on here behind me. Now, we do want you to be sharing any observations, any questions, anything you may have with us, and we have a couple ways for you to do that. So if you are watching along live, it is 3:01 Pacific Standard Time, and we are here in Southern California. So you can text us those live questions at 562-286-1838, and we will be able to answer them on air or respond back to you. Now, if you are also watching after the fact and would still like to engage with us, feel free to reach out to us via email, and you can use live@lbaop.org. So again, two ways for you to get in contact with us today. If you're watching along live, feel free to use that text line. And if it's after the fact, please use that email. Okay, so today we have a very, very fun journey planned. We are going watching for whales. So we are going to get on one of our virtual boats. We are going to head out into the Pacific Ocean and see what sorts of sea life we can find. But before that, maybe you've been whale watching before, or maybe you think about going whale watching. And I want you to kind of think of what you think you may need to bring with you to prepare yourselves. Now we're going out onto the open ocean. We're going to be on a nice big boat, so we'll be totally safe. However, the elements are a little different out there. It may be a little more windy. It's typically cooler when we are that far off of the land. So we want to make sure we prepare accordingly. I know personally, I like to take a nice jacket with me. I usually like to take some sort of windbreaker. I also usually like to grab my glasses because I hate looking directly into the sun. So I will normally grab glasses. Also, to help me see different things, I may also grab some binoculars, or maybe the boat crew will have some binoculars for us as well. Now, some other things you may want to consider are maybe a hat, but you'll have to make sure it's on nice and tight so it doesn't blow away. You may want to make sure you put sunscreen on, maybe some additional layers. And then the last thing is if you tend to be a little motion sick, that's totally cool, or you are a little nervous about maybe being motion sick, we'll want to take some seasickness medicine to make sure we are okay when we are out there looking for whales. So go ahead and think about what supplies you may be needing to grab, and I will be able to tell us more specifically about what we will be looking for when we are going out looking for whales. So, when we are thinking about whales and other marine mammals, one of the really good ways we are able to see them is because just like us, those marine mammals need to come up to the surface for air. So, one of the big ways we can look for whales and dolphins when we're whale watching is to look for any blows. Now, that is when the whale or a dolphin comes up to the surface and we see them kind of exhale. Now, it is very, very obvious with whales, not so much dolphins because they're a little smaller, but sometimes when we get close by, we can see them. So that's the first thing we are looking for. We are looking for those blows from the whales or when they exhale on the surface. Now, something else we are also looking for is another type of animal. So, if we see a whole bunch of birds, especially actively diving into the water, that means that those birds are probably eating. And if those animals are probably eating, there are other animals below the surface probably eating too. So, if we see a whole bunch of diving birds, chances are there are some whales, dolphins, or seals and sea lions nearby because they want to get in on the feast too and eat those things that the birds are eating. Now, lastly, if we see all those birds, if we see dolphins kind of moving around, jumping through the water, they create a lot of splashing. So, the third thing we want to be on the lookout for today is a whole bunch of splashing. So, we are looking for blows, which are those exhales from the whale. We are looking for birds actively diving into the water. And we are looking for splashing because that's what tells us there are some of our super, super active animals in the area, and then we can maybe get a closer look and go look at them. Now, something else that I want you to keep in mind is when we are on a boat, there are some different terms that we use to describe where things are in relation to us on the boat, especially because we may get turned around. All of us may be in different areas. So, the way we talk about where animals are in relation to us on the boat is using a clock. That really big clock, we will use a circular clock to help describe where things are. So if things are directly in front of the boat, that is our 12 o'clock. If there are things to the direct right hand side of the boat, those are 3 o'clock. Remember, just like the circular clock. Things behind us, 6 o'clock, and anything at our left is our 9 o'clock. And then you can also fill in all those other numbers too to tell us specifically where animals are. So if you hear me or any of the other crew using that today, you'll know it's because we are talking about where some of the animals are in relation to us. So, like I mentioned, we have two people that will be helping us control all the cool boating stuff you see today. We have Captain Connolly and we also have Captain Lourdes. So they're going to be navigating us through the Pacific Ocean as we go and start looking for things. All right, everybody. So I said you may need binoculars. I said you may need hat, sunglasses, things like that. So go ahead and grab all the items that you need. And we are going to start heading off out into the open Pacific Ocean to see what types of stuff we can find. Okay. So now we are headed out there. We are moving through the Pacific Ocean. Does anybody see anything yet? Now, something sometimes we notice is when we look straight ahead, sometimes we can see Catalina Island. But until then, we may have to use our binoculars to start looking for things to see what type of stuff we can find. Now, both of the captains on board today will be able to tell me when we see something. But also, if you notice anything too, feel free to point it out. Let's see. Oh, Captain Connolly says we see some splashing. Let's go ahead and take a closer look. See what it may be. I wonder what types of animals we will see with all the splashing. I wonder. It could be really, really active dolphins. It could be whales maybe making a commotion. Maybe it's a mix of the two because sometimes we get them there together. It looks like we have our first animal spotting. Now it looks like we see, a group of dolphins right here with us. Now, whenever we see a group of dolphins, that is called a pod of dolphins. Now, the ones that we are looking at right here are a type of dolphin called common dolphin. The reason I know that is because if we look at their coloration here on the side, you'll notice they have kind of a little bit of light gray and then a lot of dark gray on their body. So that's how we know that those are the common dolphins. Now, when we talk about dolphins, especially compared to other animals like maybe whales, what are some things that we think are maybe the same about them, or what are some things that we think may be a little different about them? So, for one, the way they exhale or their blow is slightly different. Dolphins and other toothed whales only have one blowhole. So that's why when they exhale, you may not be able to notice it as much compared to those much larger baleen whales, which have two blowholes. Now, I also just mentioned something else that makes them a little different. These are types of whales that have teeth. They have sharp teeth. Well, not sharp, but they have teeth just like how we do, and they will be able to kind of chew and catch their food a little more. Whereas those bigger whales, like a blue whale, a humpback, those are types of whales that we call baleen whales. So, what that means is instead of having those teeth in their mouth, they have these really long, kind of brush like baleen plates to help them catch food. So, today oh, we get a really good picture of one porpoising right here. So today, if you hear me talk about the difference between toothed whales and baleen whales, that's just talking about our friends that have teeth versus our friends that may not have teeth. They have that baleen. So here we get a really good picture of that one singular blowhole right here. And we also see a really good picture of this dolphin porpoising. So porpoising is an action where you see them jump in and out of the water, kind of like that signature dolphin style. Now, the reason why they do that is because it's actually faster and quicker for them to jump in and out of the water versus continually going through the water. And that's because when you are swimming through the water, you experience some resistance, you experience some drag. And in the air, there is a lot less of that. So when dolphins or other animals do that porpoising motion, it means that they can go a little quicker than just swimming continuously through the water. So something that I always like to say, especially on my whale watches, is When you see these animals doing this behavior, just know they don't do it on accident. They do it on purpose. All right, and the crowd goes wild for that one. So now that we got a really good look at our dolphins porpoising and taking a look at those first types of toothed whales, I think it's time for us to keep going and see what other types of animals we can find. So back to the open ocean we go. Now, something that's really cool about our waters here in Southern California is we get all sorts of animals. We get a lot of different types of whales, dolphins, seals, sea lions, but we also have a whole bunch of different types of fish underneath some of these habitats too. Whenever we kind of drive by anything that may look kind of green and stringy, we may be seeing some really cool pieces of kelp. Now, I haven't seen any quite yet. I also haven't seen any animals since we started moving again. Ooh, some really big whales maybe up ahead. Let's go ahead and get a closer look. See what our captain is talking about. What could be nearby? Oh my goodness, let's get a closer look and see what this is. Ooh, okay. We got a really big whale on I'd say between our 2 and our 3 o'clock, kind of right next to us. And again, that awesome blow from them. Oh my goodness, there's 3 of them. Okay, so seeing that much, is that one eating too? We'll talk about all those cool things that we just saw in a second. But right now, it looks like the type of whales we have next to us are some of our humpbacks. Now, the reason I know these ones are humpbacks is because they have very, very white pectoral flippers. So, do you see how when they came up right next to the boat, you were able to see that really nice white side to the pectoral flippers? Kind of like right there. And I think, well, oh, perfect right there. So they have really white ones, and also they have very long pectoral flippers. Those little flippers can be up to a third of their total body length. So they're very big and very powerful, and actually super helpful for making these whales some of these most acrobatic baleen whales. They are super good at breaching, super good at jumping in and out of the water. Now, ooh, there's one breaching on the other side of the boat. Oh my goodness. We see one of our whales mid-air using those big, big, big pectoral flippers to help it get that big or get up in the air that much. Now, you may be wondering to yourself, well, yeah, I can throw myself out of the water, or maybe I can throw my kid out of the water like that too. But can you do that when you are the size or the weight of our humpback? Now, humpback whales will be larger than some of those other ones that we saw, especially as bigger than our dolphins. And these whales can get about 52 to 56 feet long. So that's just long. That's not even how much they weigh. And they weigh about 50 to 80,000 pounds. 50 to 80,000 pounds. So you are a 60 something foot whale weighing up to 80,000 pounds, and being able to throw yourself out of the water like this is super, super, super impressive. So these humpbacks are known as some of the most acrobatic baleen whales. Just because they tend to jump out of the water, they may breach a lot. Some other behaviors we may see from them are something called tail slapping, when they slap their tail, or chin slapping, when they slap their chin, or sometimes they may roll over and kind of flap their pectorals down onto the surface too. Now, quite often we see this towards the end of an encounter with one of our whales. Seeing their tail means that we can see them what we call fluking. And so typically before they go on a little bit of a deeper dive, they tend to raise their kind of lower tail area and then their tail out of the water. Now, something that's really unique about taking a look at the flukes of all these different whales is that that's what allows us to identify individuals. So you may be wondering, well, those whales, we may not get a good view of like all their body unless they're jumping. How can you tell who's who? Well, the flukes will act just like the fingerprints on us, and they help tell us who the whale is. Some more information about it, like maybe any scarring, if it has any kind of like obvious bite marks or maybe boat strike marks on it, that can tell us more about who the whale is. So the markings as well as the different colors on it can tell us exactly who our humpbacks are. Now, one more thing I want to point out. as we see them kind of moving around us. With our humpback whales and with a lot of our larger baleen whales, one of the other ways we know they're kind of nearby is if we see what is called a fluke print. So, right after a whale dives, you usually will see a kind of calm patch of water either right underneath it or like right behind it or kind of nearby where it was. Now, that little calm patch of water is created because when they move their tails under the water, they have such massive force that they end up creating almost like a little kind of vortex. And when those bubbles rise to the surface, we get a really calm little patch of water. Now, because that typically comes from their tail, those are called the fluke prints. So when we are watching where whales are going or trying to see where they may be popping up next, one of the things we try to look for are those calm little circles of water, those fluke prints. And those help us know exactly kind of where that whale is headed. So, humpbacks are a very cool animal. They are very acrobatic, and we usually see them here in California, sometimes randomly in the summer. They typically don't have as much of a season, but we usually see sometimes the babies in the summer. And then we may see some of the rest of them here in spring and summer. So, not as much of a season as maybe other whales specifically, but we're lucky that we're able to know them here. Now, something else that's really cool that we may not be able to hear today, but humpbacks also are very, very vocal whales. They tend to have very long whale songs in which they use those to communicate with each other or maybe to call out for other ones, but that's just how they communicate. So if you ever have a chance to listen to maybe an audio recording or play on like a button, like click on a button in an exhibit somewhere, then you'll be able to hear what some of those humpback sounds sound like. Okay, so that was one really cool baleen whale we had a chance to take a look at. It's time for us to keep going. See what else we may find. Now, we're doing pretty well on our whale bingo. We got a toothed whale, we got a baleen whale. I wonder what we may be able to run into next. Like I said, we have all sorts of different seasons here. Sometimes we have whales that we get really seasonally where we know when they're coming. Sometimes there are whales that pop up and surprise us out of the blue. But we got a couple different kinds that come down in Southern California, so that's always really fun. Oh, we see another blow, and we see a blow that may be a little more heart shaped. So I think that means we may be seeing a gray whale. Now, we are really lucky because right now we are at the tail end of our gray whale season. And so we have these animals now heading back up north to the colder areas of Alaska where they typically live most of the year. Now, in the kind of winter months, hello, gray whale. We see one of our gray whales swimming down the coast to Mexico. And they do that in order to have their babies in those really warm, protected lagoons down there. Now, they hang out there for a couple of months during the winter time, and then they use the springtime to come back up and hug our coastline all the way up back towards those colder areas of Alaska. Now, sometimes they end up having their babies on the journey, or sometimes they make it down to Mexico and have their babies down there. But what's really cool is that these animals have one of the longest marine mammal migrations. They travel about 7,000 miles one way and then 7,000 miles back the other way. So they can travel up to 14,000 miles just during their migration alone. Now, gray whales are very unique because sometimes, depending on the angle that you see them blow, you see kind of like a heart shape. So it's really cool because it has a little bit more of a shape to it than maybe other animals when it just looks like a geyser that kind of shoots up. Now, these whales are called gray whales because of that gray coloration you see. But something else that's really unique is that you can see all sorts of other stuff kind of growing on them. Now, whales and also gray whales in particular tend to have a lot of lice or barnacles growing on them. So those are what all these little things are that you see here. Now, it may be because they're a little slower moving, and that means there's more time for some of those other animals to grow on them. But oh, a really good view of all those barnacles kind of up here, and then some towards the blowhole too. Now, gray whales are a little smaller than some of those humpbacks, They're usually about 45 to 50 feet. And then they're weighing about 60 to 80,000 pounds. So a little smaller, not the biggest type of whale. But like I said, they're one of the whales that has a really cool story. And it really, we get to interact with them here in Southern California. So annually, we see them start migrating down the coast. And it's always a really big deal for us. It's a big deal for other coastal communities who get really excited to celebrate all these whales migrating. So, if you ever really want to see these gray whales, you can come to Southern California and see them migrate down. Or there's even places in Mexico where you can go and actually see these animals in a boat, in a really small boat, and they will come right up to you. And that's because when they're down there, they are probably feeling maybe a little more relaxed since they made it to their destination. They know they have some more protection in those little coves. And also, they have a lot of curious calves or babies who they just had born in those really protected lagoons down there. So, gray whales are one that are really fun and one that I'm glad we were able to see before their season kind of wraps up. And they go all the way back up north to go see some other animals. So, those are our gray whales. And it looks like now we see them swimming away, and we get a really good look at sometimes those fluke prints. It depends on how they're moving or how deep they go. So I think it's time for us to keep going and see what other types of animals we may be able to find. So we got our dolphins, we got our humpbacks, and we got some gray whales. So let's keep going. See what else is out there. I'll get my glasses again. I'll get my binoculars. We'll keep looking and see what's out there. Oh, Captain Connolly says she sees something else that may be breaching or jumping. Let's go get a closer look. Let's see what may be nearby. Oh my goodness, we have gotten the ultimate bingo card with our whales that we see right here in front of us. Now, does anybody recognize this one? Or did anybody grow up being enamored or in love with these types of animals? Because I know I did, and definitely a lot of other people here at the aquarium did. These are the orcas or the killer whales, and these are the largest of dolphins. So these ones have nice teeth that they use in order to hunt all sorts of different types of things. But orcas here in Southern California are relatively rare. Something that's been cool is during my time here at the aquarium, I feel as though people have been seeing them a little more often on the whale watches. They've also been able to see a couple different types. And I've also been especially lucky to be able to go on one of those whale watches and actually see these animals. Now, orcas are one of our fan favorites, and that's because, yes, they are a dolphin group. So that means we see them in those pods. They hang out together. So they will have that one singular blowhole, but because they're a little larger, sometimes you are able to see a little bit of that blow. Now, what's really cool about orcas is that they are a type of animal that are matriarchal. So, what that means is all of their pods, all of their groups are run by moms, they're run by grandmas, they're run by great grandmas. So, that means that sometimes when we have males or maybe juvenile males that are getting ready to go find potential mates, they may leave their pod and go look for other ones. And that's because they're going to have to go find some other ones, and then all the moms, all the aunts, grandmas, great grandmas, they will all stay together. So that's something that a lot of us really like is that these animals are matriarchal. So they have all their really cool, powerful grandmas in charge. Now, something else that I also really like about orcas is that they are incredibly smart. That makes them really good hunters, and it means they can catch all the fast and all the really, really agile food that they like to eat. So, there are all sorts of different types of orcas that exist. There are some that stay in areas and they are called residents. There are some that travel a little bit more and those ones are called transients. And then there are also ones that live a little more offshore that we don't really see too often. Now, all those orcas will eat different things too. So, for example, when I am thinking about residents, the southern resident orcas that live up in Washington, they eat a lot of things that can be found nearby Washington, like salmon, all sorts of tasty fish like that. Whereas sometimes here in Southern California, we get visiting pods, and those may be ones that eat marine mammals. Sometimes they're ones that don't eat marine mammals. most common or most recently when I saw them, I saw a group of orcas that ate dolphins. So sometimes they don't even like seals and sea lions, sometimes they don't even like dolphins, or maybe sometimes they are just fish eaters. But that's what's really cool is that even though they're the same type of animal, depending on where they live, they'll be able to eat all sorts of different things. Now, something else that's also very crazy that I want to give them credit for is usually when you think about the animal that's like at the top of the food chain or the animal that's the most powerful in the ocean, you may be thinking of really big sharks, especially things like the white shark. But there has been new observations and a couple of recent sightings of orcas actually predating and eating on white sharks. Now, you may be thinking, well, a white shark is really big. Orcas are a dolphin and they're big, but they're still kind of small. But with the orcas, remember they have the power of teamwork. So these animals will be able to totally outnumber and totally outpower one white shark. So there have been a couple of instances of this recorded in South Africa and maybe Australia. I know South Africa for sure, maybe Australia, not 100%. But could be something that happens because white sharks do live there. Now, like I mentioned, orcas will travel all around to all sorts of different places, but all of those different kind of groups that move around will be slightly different. And it's a big part of different people's research where they want to see just how different those animals are, even though they're the same type of animal. It's something that always bewilders us, but something that is very, very cool. Now, orcas, like I mentioned, are a fan favorite of people here. So I think this is a very, very good animal to kind of sign off on and a good animal to kind of round out our whale watch with. So we'll go ahead and we will say bye to those orcas. We will leave them later and hopefully we'll be able to see them once again. All right, everybody. So it's time for us to start making our way back to the dock. Unfortunately, we can't stay out too long. And some of the things that you may have to keep in mind when you are whale watching are how much light can you see? What's the weather like? Is it too choppy? Is it kind of unsafe? Are we all getting really seasick? Or in the winter months, you're limited by how long the sun is up. So sometimes you get super gorgeous sunsets when you're out here, but sometimes it's just a matter of, oh, maybe there's something else going on and we have to head back to shore. So, as we are heading back in, if anybody does have any last minute questions or anything else they would like to know, please feel free to let us know. And in the meantime, I will tell you about things that we can do to make sure that we keep the habitat and the oceans healthy for the animals that live in it. Now, here in Southern California, something that we are really lucky for is we have two of the world's busiest ports. We have the port of Long Beach and the port of Los Angeles. So that means we got a whole bunch of cool stuff coming in, cool stuff going out. But it also means we have a whole bunch of boats coming through our waters all the time. Now, with these animals, since they have to come up to the surface to breathe, sometimes they may run the risk of getting hit. Some other things that happen are when these whales are kind of sleeping or resting, they will kind of snorkel right on the surface, coming up for air occasionally, but they're kind of resting, so their brain's not fully on. And that's also when they may run the risk of accidentally getting hit by a boat. So, some of the things that we do when we are out on the whale watches is we have GPSs and we can make points of where we see those animals. Once we have all those points, especially if we have ones from years and years, we can compile them together and then see if we have any special whale hotspots or areas where they seem to be hanging out a little more. And then once we know that information, we can then in turn work with the state, work with locals to help ensure that if we can move those boat routes around the whales, that we want to do that to make sure that we are not commonly going through one of their hotspot areas where it's statistically shown that they are hanging out. So that's something that has been done here at the aquarium with, I believe, our fin whale population. We wanted to see where those animals were hanging out to make sure we could kind of stay away from them. Now, other things you can do to make sure you protect the ocean and the animals that live in it are to be a responsible whale watcher, to make sure you're not chasing after them on the boat, make sure you're not bothering any animals that may be resting if you do see them on a beach. Now, also, just by joining us today, you are also doing your part in learning a little bit more about these animals, some cool fun facts about them, and also what we can better do to protect them. So, once again, everybody, thank you so much for joining us on this whale watch today. If you have any other questions, you know where to reach us. I do encourage you to get out there for yourself if you are able to. But thank you for joining with us, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.